I've made a couple videos now where I say, hey, this is not a tutorial. This is kind of a tutorial. This is how I do colorwork socks. It's not how you should do colorwork socks. It's how I do it. There, you have a lot of options, but I'll show you like step by step how I do it, but kind of briefly because this is a short. So on to tutorial camera. In this case, I'm gonna do a contrast and color cast on with this fun little colorful yarn. I always cast on using longtail. Always is a strong word. I almost always cast on using longtail because I like it best. I've heard people say that longtail cast on is not stretchy enough for everyone. I don't know how that can be possible, because even when I'm knitting a sock that is way too small for me, my longtail cast on is never the limiting factor. Okay, so now I have my stitches cast on. If I was going to just start knitting the cuff in this color, I wouldn't do any kind of joining method. I would just pull this needle out and then start knitting with it in the round. But because this is a contrasting cast on, I like to have a little bit more security in the join. So in this case, I'm going to do the joining method where I take this stitch, slip it over here. I'm going to try to tighten it the best I can. And then when I start, I'm just going to knit the first 2 stitches together. Also, because I'm doing a contrasting cast on, I'm going to pull this one through, but I'm going to knit the first round completely. I'm not going to do any purling, so that I have a more seamless, smooth line without any little purl bumps. So I weave in the ends as I go, the same way I would trap floats. So I put the color I'm trying to weave in over on the left side, and I go knit 1 stitch by wrapping under, knit 1 stitch wrapping over. So if I was just catching a float, I would do this one. So I would do this under, over. But because I am weaving in an end, I do it like 6 or so times, and then I cut the color that is now being woven out. I usually leave a longer end than that, but I perform badly under pressure. So, and then like I said, I'm gonna knit this first round, just knit. I'm probably not showing you anything, which is why this is not a very good tutorial. And now that the first round is done, it looks still a little wonky. It's gonna look a little wonky until I get some more rounds done. I am just gonna do knit 2, purl 2 ribbing for this. I usually do knit 2, purl 2 ribbing, but some yarn just calls to me to do knit 1, purl 1. And I am a combination knitter, which means I do my purls Eastern style. So if you are not a combination knitter, don't purl like me because you're going to twist your stitches. Okay, so now that the cuff is all done, we do what I think is the most important part about knitting colorwork socks, which is we increase the stitch count. Because these little floats that Colorwork creates, it's just naturally less stretchy than regular knit. Like, you can stretch it a little, but not much compared to like how much you can stretch a plain stockinette portion. And some people also say that your gauge will be tighter. I haven't found that that's necessarily true for me, but it may be true for you. And so to counteract this, rather than just going up a needle size like a lot of people recommend, I prefer to go up a stitch count. I technically, here's my little secret, I go up half a needle size and a stitch count, but I also knit all my socks 1 size too small because I find that the yarn usually relaxes a lot. I did an experiment where I measured my gauge before and after wearing a pair of socks, and it went from 9 to 10 stitches per inch to 7 stitches per inch. So like, I think it was like a 30% increase in size. And so I always size down from what the numbers say I should do. So like, I knit a 72 stitch ankle, but my ankle is actually like 10.5 inches. And so because of that, I kind of need the like increased stitch count and half a needle size up to counteract the lack of stretch. Otherwise it will fit, but the motif will get stretched out over my ankle and instep, which is fine for relatively geometric patterns like this. But when I want like a recognizable motif, like these little fish, it stretches kind of beyond recognition. All that to say, we're going to increase our stitch count by 1 sock size to accommodate for the lack of stretch of Colorwork. And this is like, you could make the floats looser than this, but then they're gonna be kind of like gaping, and they're gonna get pulled into these stitches to make them look kind of bad, and they're gonna get stuck on stuff. And so I find it better to just keep your floats relatively tight. Not tight, like it should never pucker, but keep it like flat against the back of the work is, I guess, the best way to gauge, and then just go up a stitch count. I always increase with make 1 left, which is also what I write into my patterns, not because you can't do other increases, but because I find that knit front back is a little too obvious, like you get the little purl bump, and I just hate make 1 rights. So as my personal vendetta against make 1 rights, we're making 1 left. You can always substitute in my pattern when it's a evenly around increasing. I just basically mean make 1, but I'm making the decision for you. because I don't always want to make that decision myself when I see it in the pattern. At the same time as I increase my stitches, I'm also going to switch to these Chow Twist Shorties. These are really nice because like this is the full set. It comes with 2 of the 3-inch tips, 2 of the 2-inch tips, and then 2 different lengths of wire, so that if you used the shorter wire with the 2-inch tips, you'd get true 9-inch circulars. But these ones end up as 10 and 11-inch circulars. And again, because I have kind of thick ankles, I use the 11-inch circular for my ankle, and that way I like guarantee that it's going to fit, and it's not going to overstretch it. It's just going to give me a little extra ease. If you have smaller ankles than me, like if your ankles are like 9 inches, really, I feel like if it's less than 10 inches, you probably want to use the 10-inch circular. But let's just get to increasing. So first I'm going to pull this one to get it out of the way. And I can't see myself, so I'm hoping I'm in frame. My hands are literally wrapped around the tripod, so I'm going to try not to bump it. This one says I should knit 18 and then make one left 4 times. Okay. Make one left. Let's see if you can see this at all in the black yarn. I pulled a little bar up with my right needle, and then from front to back, I put it on my left needle. You then are going to knit into this back loop, but the only way that I can get into it easily is go through the front and pull it around and then knit through it. You know, you've done it right when the stitch is twisted. And when I'm using these Chow Twist Shorties, I personally find it easier to have the bigger needle in my right hand. That varies person to person what you prefer. And then when using 9-inch circulars like this, you always need a BOR marker so you know where the beginning of the round is. I always use yellow as my BOR marker. I don't know if that's an autistic routine thing or if it's just genuinely easier to always recognize the BOR if it's always the same color instead of having to try to remember for each individual project. But regardless, that's what I do. If you were counting, you'll notice that's 4 increases, and I said we're going to increase a full sock size. I just always do the increases over 2 rounds. You don't have to. You could increase over just 1 round if you wanted to, but if you're getting into a lot of increases, I just feel like it's easier to distribute them. Most of my patterns, I try to stick to the normal standard sock sizes for both the cast on amounts and the color work, but some charts just don't work super well on different multiples, and especially in the extra large size, 88 stitches isn't really nicely divisible, so I usually end up using 90 as the color work chart size for that. And so my patterns are written so that the second increase round may be a little different between sizes. Usually the extra large, and then sometimes there'll be sizes where there's different variations where you can choose which chart you want to use, because I want to give you the option to use the normal stitch counts, but sometimes it just looks better on other stitch counts. But me going from 72 to 80 stitches, I'm just going to do 4 more increases. Okay, so we're in the home stretch right now. There's one thing I wanted to do, which is as I told you when I was weaving out to the end of the cast on color, I like to weave in my ends as I go, kind of, but because I also weave them into the end, but I think they just kind of secure the joins of new colors. And so about 5 stitches before I ever start a color, I will join it in. Sometimes I'll do longer. It just depends what mood I'm in. And so that usually means when I'm doing color work, looking ahead at the chart when I'm on this last singular round. And so looking at my pattern, there's 1 of this background color stitch before we get to the contrast color. And so I am going to want to leave at least 4. How many do I have here? 2, 4, 5, perfect. So the first stitch, I'm going to join in the color by kind of wrapping it over, securing it, and knitting 1 stitch. I'm a continental knitter, so all my color work is just both colors on my left hand, and when up to 3 colors, I'll do all on my left hand. Beyond that, I have to get my right hand involved. So because of the way I laid it and have put this onto the left, it's over, and so I'm going to first trap it by just going like that so it's under, and then I'm going to go under. Let's see if I can get it really close up. Under this one to grab the color I'm knitting with. And then you see that it's laying over after I do that. And so I grab it over this contrast color to kind of reset it. This should be its base state, is the color should be, the contrasting color on the left should be coming from kind of under the main color on the right. Okay, we are at the beginning of our round. Technically, this pattern has 1 stockinette round before the colorwork round starts, And honestly, just depending on my mood, sometimes I include the increased rounds when I'm doing it myself as one of the stockinette rounds, and sometimes I give it one extra round. It doesn't really matter. But in this case, I'm excited to get into the Colorwork, so I'm just gonna do it. So this one, I said it has one background color and then it's gonna be 2 stitches. This is not technically how I knit Colorwork. Let me get one more little tool. I like to do it like, I like to start like this so everything is secured before I add my next little thing. This is a Norwegian knitting thimble. I use it because when I am just tensioning 2 colors of yarn, I found that it doesn't really work with the way I tension my yarn when they're both over this finger. I can't like some people will wrap one under or something to keep them separate. I found that like just like doesn't work with how I tension my yarn. And so to keep them separate, the Norwegian knitting thimble is what I will use. This one, the main color, is really easy to get on the Norwegian knitting thimble. This one's a little harder because you've got to kind of go in differently. I don't really know how to explain it, but you want it to be lying like flat like this. Like, wait, like this. And so if it's getting kind of like twisted up, you've done it wrong. And you should look up a tutorial that's a little clearer than this. Okay, so now into the genuine Colorwork knitting. We've done 2 stitches of our contrast color. I now have 3 stitches of the main color. Usually when I'm switching colors after more than even just like 2 stitches, every couple of stitches, I kind of do it instinctively, so I don't know the exact counts for when I'll do it. I just pull it along, and that's kind of one of the ways I keep my floats from getting too tight. And then I have 2 more of the contrasting color, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of my background color. I will catch floats on socks if they're more than 10 stitches, usually. But that's not like the strictest rule, because sometimes if there's just like one round where there's like 11 or 12 stitches, I might still let it go. This is 9 stitches, so we don't have to worry about it. 5, 6. And I kind of periodically tug back on this to get the tension. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. This one's definitely long enough that I want to give it a little tug before I start the next color. And then I do 1, 2. And you see 2, I didn't feel the instinct to give it a tug, so I guess I won't give it a tug at 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. My first round of color work, I always have to count, but after that, I can usually just kind of like gauge, like instead of being like, I'm counting to 9, I'll go, I'm counting to, I'm gonna knit one color until I'm 3 stitches before the other color, or 1 stitch before, or whatever it may be. Sorry I'm showing this in a black yarn. This was just an idea I had that I wanted to make. So it demanded black with gray and rainbow. I can't tell you what the creative juices force me to give you. They're in charge. It's better to spread these stitches out on the right more often than less often. So when in doubt, just spread them out. Flip my little marker. Okay, this one, we're gonna jump right in, and we're gonna go 1, 2, then we go 1, then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when you're reading colorwork charts, you're basically always going to read them from right to left, because that's the way we knit, right to left. and you're going to read them bottom to top, because that's the way we knit, bottom to top. When you're knitting a cuff down sock, this means that the motif is going to be upside down in the image. When you're knitting toe up, it'll be right side up. If you want to convert between the two, you can just use any kind of classic photo editing tool to flip it. And I've got a couple rounds I want to do before I'm back to you, because I have one 3-color round in this pattern, and so I want to show you that as well. But my lunch break is over, so I'll probably be back this evening or tomorrow. So I may have gotten a little overexcited, and instead of doing just like the 1 or 2 more rows I needed before I got to my 3-color round, I may have done an entire motif and then the rows needed of the next motif. So we're going to show you what the pattern looks like in a second. Prepare yourselves. But also, I just wanted to take this opportunity to point out that when I'm knitting on tiny circulars, I use needle stoppers to make sure my stitches don't fall off my needles, because I found that tiny circulars are the case where my stitches are most likely to fall off my needles, and also the case where it's most annoying to pick up stitches. However, I did lose one of my needle stoppers, so now I just put one on and hope really hard that the second will fall off. Okay, I was gonna try to be faster for this one because we've only got 3 minutes left for it to be 20 minutes, which is already longer than I wanted it to be. So let's just get into it. Oh my gosh, look at them. Okay, so now that everything's set up, I'm gonna attach my yellow, same as I did before, and then drape it over the innermost leftmost side so that it's the most prominent color that pops to the greatest extent, if it being fluorescent wasn't enough to already do that. I'm gonna start trapping the float as I go. This can be a little tough when you've got 2 colors. I think in this case I'm gonna try to keep trapping it with the contrast color because I have more of that coming up. And then I grab background on top of all of them. Basically, when I'm doing 3 colors this way, it's the same rules as before, but you just kind of cascade them into 3. So I always grab this one over the others. I always grab this one over this one, but under this one. And I always grab this one under both of them, unless I'm weaving in the ends, as I'm doing now, or catching the float. If I want to end the colorwork before the heel like this pattern, I will decrease back to my original stitch count and then do the heel, foot, and toe in my original stitch count. If I want to continue doing colorwork onto the foot, which is what I'm going to do with my little anglerfish socks, I'll do the heel on my larger colorwork stitch count. Because it's a short row heel, which are usually on the smaller end for people, having it on the bigger stitch count kind of helps. I use a variation of a German short row heel where you do your increasing short rows using German short rows, and then you do your decreasing short rows just slipping stitches, which allows you to forego the full round that German short rows usually require, which would allow you to do a contrasting color heel, which is what I'm going to do for my anglerfish socks. And then if I'm continuing the colorwork onto the foot, I'll go back to my original needle size. I have another pair of tiny circulars in that size, mostly because my foot is smaller than my ankle, but also because denser stitches are harder wearing and you don't have to get the foot part over as much. Like the cuff has to fit over the heel, the foot doesn't, so it can be a little tighter. And then I've seen some colorwork patterns where you decrease back to your original stitch count before the toe and then do the toe. I just start decreasing the toe from the colorwork stitch count, and I haven't had any problems with that. So I know that was all like very long. I hope some of it was helpful.